So this is part D or part 4 of the Khoodeelaar campaign, world exclusive diagnosis of the British media, that is Fleet Street. When we say the diagnosis of Fleet Street, it's not about just the contents, either printed or not printed in the Fleet Street papers. It's about the whole world. So the context is the world, literally, and the world that is denied the existence of in the fantasy world created by the Fleet Street agenda, which is clearly racist agenda. I've just watched on BBC Newsnight, a YouTube or an online kind of interview conducted by a woman called Emma Barnett on the Newsnight BBC 2 channel with Michael Cohen, who was one of Donald Trump's lawyers before Donald Trump settled on Rudy Giuliani. Now, everyone knows about Michael Cohen. And Michael Cohen is not denying what he has done wrong in lying for Donald Trump for years. And he admitted that he became a cult member of the Trump organization, and the fact that he had been fascinated by the cult personality of Donald Trump from the 1980s. That is what he admitted. And that is not damning at all in comparison with so many other things he has actually admitted in court in the USA. And it's not original. It's not shocking. What is shocking is the stupidity of this Emma Barnett. Now, the BBC Newsnight has been a stupid kind of program. When they interviewed me about this Stratford School campaign that I was running in 1992, they completely messed up the whole context and they misreported the whole thing. And I shall be covering that, I shall be updating on that in due course, not in this particular edition. But the Newsnight program has always been overstated, even when Jon Snow was, not Jon Snow, his cousin was kind of the main reporter. And his cousin, the other Snow, Peter Snow, was on television before Jon Snow became a familiar face through Channel 4 News. The Peter Snow was the most overrated, or one of the most overrated faces through the BBC. And during the 1960s, when the Palestinians were in battle for survival and protection, the BBC played a sinister role of lying against the Palestinians. And this continued into the 70s, when Peter Snow became the main fronter of the BBC's kind of cover-up against the Palestinians. And of course, many other cover-ups against many other people across the world. And Peter Snow, as I said, was overstated. It was left to me to kind of unintentionally create the monster called Jeremy Paxman, and the cult of Jeremy Paxman was created by the BBC liars in direct retaliation to my attacks and exposition of Paxman the racist. I have said this before, and I'll be putting a longer piece into it as to how I created the monster, Jeremy Paxman, without intending to. It's one of those things like the creation in the fantasy kind of fiction of the monster of Dracula. Now, Jeremy Paxman, I mean, after he left the kind of chair or the BBC's kind of spot, has been exposed as being no more original than Peter Snow or any of the other journalists. And there is a circle of criminal kind of conspiracy whereby most of the criminals occupying the posts, I mean, perpetuate, collude, and are complicit with one another, so that they create a circle of kind of obstruction which obstructs the truth coming out through any of their so-called journalism. I mean, the same thing is happening with what Paxman called mini-me when Jeremy Vine appeared on the surface. And he said it was his kind of copy. Vine is one of the most highly paid kind of parasites, paid too much money by the BBC abusing license fee payers' contributions. And Vine is also vain and empty. I'm going through all of those because I want to say something permanently kind of vindicated about the BBC and I will not discuss at length Emily Mate Lies and why I called her Emily Mate Lies, because she's a liar. And she's a racist liar who is being protected by the racist clique in the BBC, who have allowed information about her being the victim of a stalker to come out into the media regularly. But this lying, racist liar, Emily Mate Lies, is being protected from being held to account for her lying, lethal lying in a racist motivated kind of way. Now, Emma Barnett, in her stupid interview with Michael Cohen, who was one of Donald Trump's lawyers, repeatedly answered his charge that she hadn't read his book, Michael Cohen's book, Disloyal, that is. And she repeatedly said that she had. The way she then asked him the same question showed that she hadn't read the book, and she has not the slightest interest in getting it in context, getting it in proportion. Because Michael Cohen should not be treated as if by denouncing Trump, he has committed some kind of crime and has become unreliable thereby, which is what Emma Barnett did. The bigger crime and the bigger criminal, of course, is Donald Trump. And he has been doing the bigger crimes. But Emma Barnett, if anyone watches her kind of confrontation with Michael Cohen from Mars or some outer space, and would have no access to other information to put all of this in context, would have thought that Michael Cohen had done some major crimes and not Donald Trump. Because Emma Barnett also showed her ignorance about the law and the legal system in the where she spoke to him. And Michael Cohen, being a practiced liar lawyer, knew that she hadn't read his book. So he stuck to his gun. In a later edition, we shall be running some extracts and copies and quotes from that interview. Suffice to say that the stupidity of Emma Barnett has not stopped the BBC morons overhyping her, because she's been, in the last 1 year, she has been hyped and hyped and hyped and hyped, and she has got more slots that give her bigger money than probably Jeremy Vine. She has got too many slots, and she has hardly any brains to substantiate those, which is why, despite the fact that the BBC has got billions of pounds, it has got not anything like the comparable service that it should provide to telling the truth and serving society and holding the powerful to account. Michael Cohen is not the one who should have been harried in that way. It should have been Trump. And Emma Barnett missed a big opportunity by not asking Michael Cohen some serious questions that she could have asked, and he would have been delighted to answer, because those would have been about the modus operandi of Donald Trump. How does this big liar operate? And the fact that Michael Cohen was a big kind of addict of the cult of Donald Trump meant that he had deeper and higher and longer running access to the Trump organization than most people. So Emma Barnett showed that she is not a real journalist. She went to Cardiff School of Journalism and Media, whatever. That didn't train her to be a proper inquisitor in terms of the journalistic investigator work that she could have done. And that is what is happening with most of the Newsnight fronters these days. Remember, this is the same program that exonerated the biggest known sex abuser in British history, Jimmy Savile. And they suppressed the investigative report into Jimmy Savile. BBC News that did. So it's not a program that actually is worth watching or commending. It is one of the examples of the BBC being completely down market, going down the hill, going into the darkness, and obstructing a proper scrutiny and investigation. As far as my campaign in 1992 was concerned, the BBC actually misunderstood, and it is now what, 28 years now since that happened. The BBC misunderstood the campaign against racism at the Stratford School, and they still do 28 years on. So the BBC doesn't understand most basic topics, and it has got employed serial ethnicity-linked liars and crooks and criminals. One of those criminals is Patrick Young, Pat Young, a brother of the Young that is now feted too much by the Guardian and via the Guardian, to the point that he has become now a career kind of ethnicity-linked person. Now, Pat Young, the liar, was in Tower Hamlets in September 1993 when the racist attack on a Bangladeshi boy happened in a commercial road. And that criminal interviewed me. And instead of broadcasting my interview, he inserted somebody who impersonated me as the campaigner and interview and broadcast that one. Now that is only one of a long list of claims that I have against the BBC for inserting impersonators to impersonate me while I was doing the campaign, and they spoke to me and got my information and they stole it and abused it. And that is a long list of contractual, breach of contract and other criminality claims against them. So Emma Barnett, if I were being quizzed by her, I would have said to her, but Michael Cohen, for whatever reason, didn't do that. I would have said, what page? I would have asked her to give the page numbers and items on what page. Because if I were Michael Cohen, if I had written the book, I would have known what page contained what item. And that would have given her away. And I would have asked her not to look at anything, any notes or anything, just say what was the item and what was the index. What was the list of the items on the index? Now that is just an illustration of the evidence-based analysis and an analytical find about the fact that the British media is completely at a loss as to how to make itself relevant to the British public, the British society. Because of that, the British media is not holding the government or parliament or the politicians to account, which is why politicians are lost, because they don't know what is the right thing to do and what is the wrong thing to do, what is the objectively verifiable kind of valid things to do. So today's Observer, the Sunday Observer, the 25th of October, is full of contradictory items. Now, one of the items that are running on the front page, one of the two items, one of the only two items of, quote, news they're running on the front page is the heading, PM waiting for US poll results before Brexit move. Now, that is only inevitable, but the point is that in the copy by Toby Helm, who is a kind of very wet political editor, or Toby Helm, they're not really running the story about Brexit, because this should have been headlined Brexit exposed. But they're not running that. The picture they're running on the front page is about Rashford. Marcus Rashford's playing against Chelsea yesterday. His free meals campaign has created a grassroots reaction. Match report page, sport page 2, and Michael Regan and Press Association photograph. Now, this is the 2,000 pediatricians, that is doctors who specialize in child health, back Rashford drive. And Royal College has rarely seen such anger. Now, what the Observer is missing is what the BBC is missing, what the ITV, Sky News, everything, every outlet, mainstream so-called, and of course the rest of Fleet Street, they're all missing the fact that it has been a completely unexpected source creating this campaign. It shouldn't be. It should never have been left to a 22-year-old footballer to create a campaign that had been there waiting. That is the point. That has been the point. That campaign has been there. It's not Rashford that has noticed this. Of course, I mean, they are giving him credit, and he's probably due a lot of credit for the kind of connections he has made. But the point is that poverty has been staring the politicians in the eye. And this is what they should be talking about today. They're not talking about it. Even now, even after this example, they have not been talking about poverty. And the same thing I say, I could give a list. The point about the legal aid system being corrupt, the point about the judiciary being corrupt, criminal, and racist, the point about housing being a human right being violated, and the point about housing being in need of being completely replaced, not allowed to be used as a money-making thing, but as a human right. They're two different things. These are campaign issues that Labour Party MPs, Green Party, quote, MP, and the Lib Dems MPs should be talking about, but they're not. Now, about the Lib Dems, I have got one thing to say repeatedly, which is that the Lib Dems are even more corrupt than the Conservatives. And I don't necessarily talk about the Lib Dems corruption in Tower Hamlets. I talk about the Lib Dems corruption when it was exemplified in the interview that Cathy Newman on Channel 4 News conducted with then two candidates, one Joe Swinson and the other Ed Davey. And the stupid Newman asked the stupid question, would they trigger the nuclear button? And they both said yes. Now, not only has there been no need for such a kind of test to be made of any potential leader of a political party in Britain, no matter how small that party was, there has been none since, because everyone with any sense, any brain knows that nuclear war is not a war. It's end of the world. It's not a war. You can't have winner and loser. There is all loss. There is no planet. That is what secretly everyone is saying. So there is no need to test anyone's willingness to press the nuclear button. There is no need. And the Labour Party is still making the mistake of not stopping this being the legitimate question. There is no legitimacy. There are limits to what you can do. Because if you go beyond the limits, you destroy the planet. It's not one territory, one village, one mountain. It is entire humanity and the whole planet. That is just one part of the destruction that the existing arsenal will cause. And it will still be there. There is more ammunition, nuclear ammunition, to destroy the planet many times over. Why isn't this being pushed to the debate by anyone? The 75th anniversary of the United Nations has gone yesterday. And this preacher man, Antonio Guterres, has been indulging in stupid side publicities. The biggest threat is the kind of silence on the nuclear danger to the whole of humanity. That is one side. And the others are the poverty, the hunger, the wars that are being fueled by the military-industrial complex. These are the big issues that the Labour Party here and the Democrats over there and their counterparts in other countries in the world should be talking about. Why aren't they? And if they are all silent, where is the Fleet Street media going to get any substance from? Essentially, the Fleet Street media is manned and womaned by people that are not very bright. And the morality question is completely absent from their considerations and behavior. As Margaret Rashford has shown. I mean, he has single-handedly captured the headlines. How is that possible? This is a headline that has been waiting for everyone. Why hasn't the Labour Party done that? And why hasn't anybody, any other MP done that? In the case of the Labour Party not doing the right thing, when I told Neil Kinnock in the late 1980s and in the kind of weeks before the May 1990 local council elections, when I told Kinnock, and I told him by faxes, because in 1990 there was no internet, not accessible to me anyway. It was another 12, 13 years before I got to use internet and emails in any significant way. There were other occasions, but not in the kind of frequent way that I did use faxes for years. And in the 1990 kind of council elections, I told Kinnock that the Labour Party in Tower Hamlets was corrupt, racist, incompetent, and all the rest of it. Now remember, that was the second council election after the election of 1986, which was lost by Labour to the SDP Liberals. And that was the first time that the SDP Liberals kind of took control of Tower Hamlets Council, whether as Liberals or whether as SDP Liberals. And I had warned the Labour Party members before the 1986 election that they were heading for defeat or disaster because of their corruption and criminality and their racism. That was 1985, 84, 85, 86. And the month of May 1986 is significant for the fact that I organized a demonstration against the BBC in the White City. White City is the name of a street where the BBC headquarters was. And that was in protest against the racist, anti-Siloti, anti-Muslim, corrupt play invented by a bunch of criminals that were conspiring to profit by misrepresenting the community in Tower Hamlets, the Bangladeshis. And this bunch of criminals deserves fuller investigative attention, which we shall be publishing in due course. For the time being, let's suffice to say that the protest was organized on the 22nd of May, 1986. And the reason was that the BBC had completed on that day the weekly screening schedule of the thing called Ghetto. Now, this ghetto was invented just like the Brick Lane book was in fact invented by Monica Ali. So Monica Ali invented the so-called book, stealing the name of Brick Lane and stealing the community's campaign around Brick Lane, defense of the Brick Lane name and the community. And this ghetto was called King of the Ghetto. And it was a complete untruthful racist plug for a racist confected by a group of 3 or 4 Indians conspiring to discredit the Bangladeshis in East London. And they stole money under that cover from the Channel 4. So there is a number of cases against Channel 4 outstanding, including that one. And so in May, I organized that demonstration outside the BBC, and saboteurs joined the demonstration and they rushed to end the demonstration. So I had to kind of leave the demonstration because all the others had left, and it would be just one person doing the demonstration, which had started with 30 or 40 people. So it would be different if I had only started it all by myself. That would be different, and I could have stayed longer. Anyway, we'll come back to that one. And that demonstration was organized at a time when I was doing other things. I'm doing other things now because of lockdown. The approach is different because physical kind of contact is different. But the principle remains the same. What I'm doing is updating on those and explaining some of the things about the defense of the community in the East End of London. which the Khoodeelaar campaign has been doing, amongst other things. And the Khoodeelaar campaign is part of the movement defending the community in the East End of London. That is the name. And what is happening with the updating commentary on the way that Neil Kinnock misled the Labour Party in the 1980s, and how the 1990 council election was again lost by the Labour Party. The warnings that I gave Neil Kinnock in the faxes that I sent to him over months contained references to 3 or 4 criminals operating in the Bangladeshi community, in the name of the Bangladeshi community, but operating as Labour Party members. These criminals were not interested in defending the community, in defending democracy, in defending anything. Their sole purpose was to get themselves in positions, either as councillors or whatever. And these criminals knew wrongly that if I stood for any council election, then I would beat them. Not because of just skills and abilities, but my involvement in the community's defense had been widely known to such a point that I would have got easy name recognition and support would be easier to gain at a local council election. So they blocked my candidature as a council candidate, as a Labour Party candidate, although I remained a Labour Party member, but they blocked it by doing regular defamatory kind of communications to a man called Bob Ashkettle. Now, Bob Ashkettle had been a trade union person for a long time, and he was the chair of the branch, St. Mary's branch of the Labour Party, where I was living at the time. We're talking about the late 1980s, up to the May 1990 council election. And these criminals made phone calls, made communications, but the main content of their allegations and smear were not factual. They were intended to give the white members of the Labour Party sufficient amount of doubt and confusion so that they would not be enthusiastic in supporting my nomination as a candidate for the Labour Party at the election. So they did that, and Ashkettle and others confessed to me that that is what happened. And the essential summary today of that kind of criminality done by some Bangladeshi skinned criminals is that they are nowhere politically, and they have done severe damage to the Bangladeshi community by their obstruction and smearing and lying intended to stop me being a elected kind of member of the council or whatever from this area. So they did similar things. They went to the white members of the party and they kind of invented stories. Completely false. And this is now 30 years later. There is no trace of anything they said. If challenged, they all deny saying anything against me. But they did. They did say absolute lies and untruths because they couldn't say anything truthful. Anything truthful they would say would have been only possible if they knew what I was doing. They didn't know what I was doing because I was always doing what I've been doing now, investigating the evidence and telling the truth. They lived in another planet, which is not investigating the evidence or telling the truth. They're doing the opposite. And they're condemned and consigned in the dustbin of history because they lied. And they betrayed the community, and they betrayed not just the Bangladeshis, but betrayed the other people in the borough of Tower Hamlets and in East London. So this campaign that I had to mount against the BBC for screening this corrupt, criminal, racist, stupid thing called King of the Ghetto is in need of updating, which we shall be doing when we get hold of the actual script so that we can refer to the script and everything. But the essential fact is that all the manipulation, all the lies against the community, that the various factors have conspired from time to time to spread via the mainstream media in this country, have been proven to have been lies. I'll come to Monica Ali in a minute. And the main resistance always has been from me. I mean, all the criminals who have made careers that are now shattered have been unaware, asleep, when these crimes have been committed or in process or getting underway. There was one exception with Monica Ali's kind of attack on the community. When somebody other than me kind of wrote a detailed letter protesting against Monica Ali to the publishers. I'll come to the shortcomings of that letter in a minute. But by the time I got hold of the information that there was a film being made in the Brick Lane area based on Monica Ali's lies, my comments are only accessible on the website of the independent newspaper online. The rest of the comments and activities, for some reason, are not accessible. For some reason, somebody must have got in touch with Google and kind of removed some of the articles. There were about 300 articles that I published during the protest against Monica Ali, but most of them are not accessible anymore without further research, which we shall have to do in order to establish all of those. But essentially, what I said about the Monica Ali book was a peaceful statement I made, based on the contents, based on the implications, and based on the kind of absolutely fictitious falsehood that she had based her book on, so-called. Monica Ali is the daughter of a non-Siloti father and a white mother. So she is not familiar with, and she is not sympathetic with the Bangladeshi community that is in Tower Hamlets. And the fact that she wrote a book called Brick Lane gave away her stupidity and her ignorance. Monica Ali is like the kind of latter-day edition of Uncle Tom. Her gender and things kind of adapted to misrepresent the Bangladeshi community. And her book was complete rubbish, as was the film. But both this rubbish book and the film have been praised by the British mainstream, Fleet Street. Again, nobody else has noticed. And I am going to update this on the new kind of editions of this program and through other campaigns, because it needs to be established factually and evidentially how intentionally corrupt and racist and anti-Muslim was the project that gave Monica Ali the name, the platform, and the advance money. The publishers, the American anti-Muslim publishers, paid her hundreds of thousands of pounds, if not more. in advance. And she stole the name of Brick Lane. Brick Lane has existed for a long time. A fiction cannot be based on a real kind of place. Not especially the kind of fiction that she spun around it, completely rubbish, untenable, stupid. And all the racists loved it.